Now this is a job done by the carpenters of this homeowner. The stones have arrived, the floor has been waterproofed, and they will begin to lay these stones shortly. So we're going to move a little quicker in the video. The stones are numbered as you've seen before, and they're going to be laid out in that definite pattern. The fellows are going to lay the mortar, it's a quick set mortar, on the floor, as well as back butter each stone. And stone number 1 goes into place. You can see suction cups are a must. They're laying it down carefully, and number 1 done. Same process for stone number 2, floor done, stone back buttered. Now we're going to lay stone number 2. You see the way he's handling it? Puts it down on its edge. He treats it like it's a sheet of glass. Again, the suction cups, going to set it into place against the wall tight, and then bring those edges tightly together. Now this clip for the center stone, or the stone that goes over the drain, this is going to be real time. I'm not going to speed it up at all. So once again, the floor is done, the stone is back buttered. This stone is the most fragile of all of the stones, and again they treat it like a sheet of glass, always putting it on its edge, but it is machined in this case and in every case to land right on top of the drain. So they're very careful with it, using the vacuum cups to lower it down into place, and then they're going to shimmy it, bring all edges together, and apply pressure to set it into place properly. And a quick overview of what they've done so far: 3 stones in place, setting up for stone number 4. Yeah. Now for stone number 4, setting it down gently. 2 guys really must do this work together, and there it is. Now for the last stone, stone number 5. Again, all the same principles. Set into place, apply pressure, bring all the joints together, and you can see how tight these joints are. Next step, you'll see how we work it, but we're going to give this an hour to set. Now the stones are set, and with the fine we're going to create a beautifully straight line between each stone, and it's done with a carbide tool attached to the fine, and we drag it across, and it makes a perfect line to then be grouted. I want to make sure that you fully understand this process. Doing another seam here, straight edge, the fine with the carbide, dragging it down the seam, making it larger, and whenever you're doing it, don't cut into another seam. Don't overshoot any seam. Now once that process has been done with the fine, then you take a piece of sandpaper, a good stiff sandpaper, 80 grit, you fold it in 2, and then run it down the seam to sand the edges of the stone. There you go. Now some of the stones may be a little higher than the other, so with the sander you blend the levels of the stones together, and it's done quite quickly and easily. And check the edges with a penny. Here you go, the penny slides right across. You know you've done the job well. The sanding has been done. Now you clean out the seams, getting ready for the epoxy mortar joint. Those joints have been cleaned. Now we're preparing to mortar the joints. We tape down each side of every seam to keep the mortar directed right to the joint, and we find it works very well. Now we're ready to fill the joints. The product we use is made by Sika, Anchor Fix. It's available at Home Depot and the color matches the stone beautifully. When you start out with a new tube, make sure that the mixing is done, and you'll notice that the color of the epoxy coming out is a gray like you see here. That tells you it's mixed properly and you can begin. So he's applying the epoxy anchor fix made by Sika directly to the joint, and he's making sure that he's filling the joint well, and it's a fairly straightforward process. Now you've set the mortar in place, scrape it with a plastic scraper, pushing it right into the joint. You've smoothed out all the joints. Critical now is to remove the tape. The epoxy hardens very quickly. Joints are all filled now. Next we move on to setting the inside and outside curb. When setting the outside curb, you slope it just a little bit into the pan itself, so when the water comes down the glass, it flows back onto the shower pan. Now here we're doing the inside baseboard or curb, if you will, a nice continuous bead of the anchor fix, and you set those baseboards in place, scraping away any squeeze out. Very important. So the inside baseboard is set. Now we're going to do the outside curb. Again, another continuous bead of the anchor fix. So now we're going to set the curb into that bead of anchor fix epoxy. And remember that these were all done dry fitted. That's what you need to do to know that everything's going to fit into place. You don't want to find yourself sticking stones into quick drying epoxy and somewhere you've made a mistake. So we're also sloping them back into the shower pan so that water flows back into the pan. So the baseboard and the curb have dried in place. You've taped both sides of the stones again and setting in another nice bead of the epoxy anchor fix. After that, you'll take your finger and run down that bead to smooth it out, and then remove the tape immediately afterwards, because once again the epoxy dries very quickly. Now everything's been completed, all the joints have been filled and raked over. Now we're going to do the finish sanding. 80 grit to begin with, and then 120 grit as a finish sand. Now here we go with the finish sanding. I'm not going to bore you with it, so again, start with 80 grit and then go 120 grit. These Festool sanders are the way to go. They make your job very easy. All the flat surfaces have been sanded. Then you take a piece of sandpaper and you, what we call, break the edge. You just sand the sharp edges of all the stones. Another great little trick, when we were installing, I noticed a few just dots of iron in the stone. So you mark them out, then you chip them out, and then you fill them. Now we're filling them with the anchor fix again. Little dab. We're going to sand it afterwards, a little dab. Then you take a plastic scraper and just smooth it out. Kind of boring to watch, but boy does it work well. Over here was just a little dent, so we fixed it. Anchor fix epoxy is dried, sanding it off. It blends in beautifully. You can't see it. The stones may have a few 5, 6, 8 little dots of iron occasionally, so this is how you fix it. It will show a rust spot if you don't take them out, but this cures the problem perfectly. Drains sit in place with the anchor fix as well. Overview before we wash the shower pan. It's been water tested and holds water, so that works perfectly. Now we're going to give it a wash. The color change is obvious when we wash it. You'll also note that there's a bead of white silicone that transitions from the curb of the shower pan to the wall. Forgot to show you that, but you have to do that as well. Job is finished. Took us about 4 hours. Compare this to any other shower floor. There is no comparison. This will never break down. Unlike the tile and the marble shower floors and their grouts, this stone will never stain. Its traction is better than any synthetic or natural material. The grout joints are made with a bulletproof epoxy that will never break down, never stain. The aesthetic is beautiful. Underfoot, it feels great. When the water hits it, it's instantly warm. This shower floor is unbeatable.